Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Random Robot Does Something Random. Today I'm going to show you how to shuck a lobster. I'm going to let you know what the best meat in the lobster is and what parts to avoid. So first off, you're going to need a couple of cooked lobster here. You're going to need a baking tray with some edges there to catch all the liquid. You're going to need some scissors, a fork, a skewer, or this is called a lobster fork, and a nutcracker or lobster cracker. So grabbing the lobster in one hand, we're going to turn it upside down, and you can see the joint right here. I'm just going to take the arm, as it were, and bend it up towards the center and break off the claws and arms. And the next step is we're just going to twist off the legs, and we're going to use these later. I'll show you a trick on how to get the meat out of these later. Now we're going to remove the tail, so holding the body in one hand, tail in the other, and give it a twist. And you can see all the dripping here, that's why we have the tray. Next, we're going to separate the claw from the elbows, so we're going to separate this joint here. So turning the claw away from us, we're going to push with our thumbs and break them apart. And when I'm doing this, making sure the spikes on the claw are pointed away from me, and I'm pushing with my thumbs only, because there's a lot of spikes on the elbows as well. So the next part, I'm just going to remove the movable part of the claw. I'm just going to pull it away from itself. Again, look at all the liquid. So we got to be careful. So again, we're going to remove the other movable part of the claw. Again, look at all that liquid. Normally we try to salvage that liquid for later, and we could use that in soups or stocks or whatever. So pulling off that membrane there, I should be able to take my skewer or my lobster fork and just pull that meat out. So I'm going to do that with the other one as well. So the next part is I'm going to tackle the claws, and with the spikes on the claw pointed away from you, we're going to use the lobster cracker on it. Now this guy, the shell's pretty soft on it. He must have molted recently, and that would explain why he doesn't have a full body of meat here. So I should be able to just use a pair of scissors here because he is a bit soft, and pull that meat out. This lobster must have molted recently, would explain why he's not, the meat's not full. And again, pointing the spikes away from you, using the cracker to break the shell a little bit, and then I'm just going to follow through with the scissors. Now if the shell is quite hard, like they're supposed to be, sometimes the scissors won't work, but you can cause enough fractures in the shell to actually pull it apart, and it's actually not that bad. So once I got those claws cleaned, I'm going to work on the elbows. So you see there's a little seam right here. I'm just going to break that off with my hands. And again, use caution when tackling these elbows because there is a lot of spikes on them. I'll just clean whatever little meat's in there out. Again, this guy's pretty skinny. I'm not really happy with him. I'm going to use my nutcracker or my lobster cracker on the knuckle itself. I'm going to try to soften that up and cause some fractures in it. In this case here, I should be able to use my scissors and just cut right through it and remove that meat as one piece. Sorry, I put it above the camera. So now I'm going to work on the other elbow and just work that seam until it comes apart. Now don't use too much force. If you use too much force, you're going to stab yourself with one of the many spikes on this guy, and they are quite painful, so just use some caution. I'm just going to use some scissors here to cut down the center and peel it open. So that was actually the most challenging part about cleaning a lobster done. Now I'm going to show you how to clean the tail. Now the tail has these spikes on it that we have to be concerned with. So what you do is you hold it in your hand and you give it a squeeze and you crack it open, and then we slowly pull them apart, being careful because along the edges there's some little spikes. And I'm just going to take my fork here, insert it at the top, and pull the meat out. And it should just come right out in one piece. Now the tail contains something you don't want to eat. So you see this little flap at the top here. We should be able to pull this flap down, and this is all good meat here. But you notice, sometimes it pulls out with it. This vein here, it's actually not a vein, it's their poop chute as it were. We're going to peel that off, and we don't want to keep that. Now there's some eggs here, and they're actually good to eat. And you're going to keep that. And it continues all the way down into the base. So what I do is I take my fork, and I move in beside it and just tear it open a little bit. And that way I can get the rest of that poop chute, as it were, out. You definitely don't want to eat that. It probably wouldn't hurt you, but who wants to eat what a lobster ate? Now I'm just going to show you. You take your thumb and you put it inside the body. I like to turn it upside down to catch all the liquids, and I'm just going to peel this part back here. So inside here is the tamale, and up towards the head, see all this green stuff you could actually eat. Now, up towards the head is you want to avoid. There's some stomach stuff in there and everything else that could taste quite bitter, but all that tamale you could eat, you probably should avoid it if you have high cholesterol. But you could also use it for sauces or soups. So I'm going to take the body and break it in half. Now this is something people often miss, but in between each of these little leg segments, there is a little chunk of meat. And this is by far the sweetest, flakiest meat of the whole lobster. So again, it takes a little bit of time, and this guy was a little bit skinny, but you can take out these flakes of meat fairly easy by just pushing with your thumb in between the membranes. And the meat just slides right out, and it is very tasty. It is well worth the effort. Just be careful not to take any of that membrane with you. It's a bit chewy. So that was a basic part of the lobster done. So we got basically almost all the meat. And at the end of this video, I'm going to actually show you some tricks on how to get some of the other meats out that you may not be aware of. So let's get started on our second lobster here. And I'm just going to speed this up here. We're going to perform the same procedure as we did before, separating it into its main parts. Let's get those shells out of the way here. And again, pointing the spikes away from us, we're going to separate all the claw pieces and remove the meat with our skewer or lobster fork. And again, this one is actually has a lot more meat. The shell is still relatively soft. But it is much fuller. I'm much more happy with this guy here than I was the previous one. And the shell is a little bit harder. As you can see, it's taking me a little bit more time to get some of that meat removed from the shell. But you should be able to totally clean a lobster in about 5 minutes to 10 minutes tops. Usually I can do them in about 5 minutes or so. So again, normally I would try to save as much of this juice as possible if I planned on freezing this, or if I was planning on making maybe a lobster bisque or something. There's a lot of flavor in that juice coming from the lobster. Squeezing the tail on both sides. Be careful, there is small little spikes there, so as long as you keep these spikes pointed down, usually away from you, it's quite simple to avoid getting stabbed. And also there's these little tail parts I forgot to show you as well, that I'll show you how to clean those. Again, removing the poop chute, I'm just going to take a little piece of paper towel because I made a little mess of him. He didn't come off cleanly. So I'm just going to scoop him out and tear out the remainder of it and just wipe off any of the excess that may have gotten out. And again, this guy had a lot more meat in his body. Nice good flakes here. So body meat is well worth the effort to remove. Again, the bigger the lobster, the easier this is. So you notice I have a roller here, and when cleaning the fins at the bottom here, for example, if I just use a roller, I can slide the meat right out of there with very little effort. And this is a neat trick some people don't know. And you can also do that with the legs. So this is something a lot of people don't do, but you actually get a good amount of meat coming out of the legs. And just a few seconds with a roller is all you need to do. It's one of the simplest meats to get out of the lobster. It is well worth the effort. I highly recommend doing this. So after you're done the legs, I'm just going to show you a little hidden piece of meat a lot of people don't know. And that's located right under the tamale. So if you lift up the green stuff, as it were, you should have a flap of meat there. And this is very good meat. It always bothers me when I see people waste so much of their lobster. They pay a premium per pound for this, and you might as well get as much out of it as possible. Again, I'd like to thank you guys for watching The Random Robot Does Something Random. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.